Fantasy football playoffs. We're in the thick of it, baby. And we've got our fantasy football expert to help us through. Plus, your questions will be answered by our expert. The Man Show Boy Green Digital starts now.
Let's go! It's time for the talk to you. 'Cause it's all we're gonna do. If all green is always on the sea, it was gonna always bring to life. So get ready. Get ready, 'cause here they come.
Oh, yeah, baby. We're here. We're less than a week from Christmas, and thank you guys for joining us. My name is Paul Eston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm here for representing the Man Show Boy Green Digital. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Cam's Pizzeria, where quite often it's love at first slice. We're less than a week away from Christmas. We got a live fantasy football program for you guys right now. If you guys are joining us wherever you're watching, that's on my YouTube channel at BoyGreen25, my Twitter at BoyGreen25, or on the MC Show Digital YouTube channel at MC Show Digital. Make sure you light up the comment section with your questions, regardless of whatever league you're in. If you're in one of our radio leagues or in any other league, drop your questions, and we'll have our expert answer all of those here on the program. Without further ado, let's bring him in. Our main squeeze, the face of the franchise of the RotoWire company. It is Joe Gosh darn Bartel, baby. He's one of my favorites, and he joins us now here on the show. What's up, Joe?
Oh, not too much. I mean, it was an awesome game last night. I think that'll probably be game of the year, and to have it go down to the wire to the way it did in overtime, the 2-point conversion was great. For me, I think it was especially good because I know there's a certain person to the other side of me that is dealing with a 45-point bomb, which they had to deliver the week prior. So how does it feel to have the shoe on the other foot, sir?
You know, that is funny that, like, the football gods, right? So a week yesterday, right? Kyle Pitts dropped 46 points out of nowhere. You're like, wow, Kyle Pitts, okay. And basically, you know, you don't say this on the Thursday, but it was on cruise control. You mentioned it the next day, the unlikelihood of someone on the other side trying to overcome if they were facing that sort of thing. So I thought it was sort of karma because, like, as I was watching the game, I had Kenneth Walker, so I was rooting for that, obviously. But I just said, like, when I looked at the matchup, for those who don't know, I'm playing against Big Al in our radio league that has Joe Bartel in it as well. And I look at the matchup, and I'm just trying to judge. I'm like, the person that scares the crap out of me, that I'm checking under my bed at night, is Puka Nacua. He's the person that can obviously go off. He's a superstar player, and superstar players can do superstar things. So all week I'm looking at that. I'm like, ugh, God, that scares me. Please just don't kill me. Have your 20-point night, have it, enjoy it, and I'll be like, woo! Oh, thank goodness. So going into it and just seeing touchdown after touchdown, and a few times Stafford missed him for a long time.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
I was like, oh, thank God. Every time, like, and I was just, and I'm like, what am I doing? How am I living my life? I'm like on the edge of the seat for every play that could happen, and then goes to overtime. He gets a touchdown. I'm like, Jesus, you got to be kidding me. So I would say the only saving grace for me, which didn't happen in the match I was playing last week, I played Kyle Pitts and no one else was playing on either of our matchups. So it's just a 46 burger just sitting there. The thing that I am blessed about, that one of my million trades I pulled off, is Kenneth Walker as his game of the year and cut into it. And that's throughout the entire game. Every time Kenneth kept getting a big play, I'm like, cool, just make it, just cut into whatever Puka Nacua is going to get, and I'm going to feel good. So maybe that's not the right way to do it here, Joe, but as I look at it, Kenneth Walker scores 25.4 points. Puka kills it, of course, with 46.5. But then I sort of evaluate it like, okay, so Puka scored 21 points because I didn't expect that from Kenneth, and I imagine most KW2 owners didn't either.
Yeah, no, you're right. First off, it's crazy that Puka had the third highest fantasy score of the entire year in full point PPR leagues, the highest receiving score of the entire season, and yet it should have probably been a bigger game. He missed him. Stafford missed Nacua wide open in that second quarter, I think, for a 32-yard touchdown. There were instances where I thought Nacua could have been even more involved, and obviously overtime helped things a lot. There's one thing, and I agree with you entirely with this, and it's just overall conversation that we'll probably have coming from, I think, the best game we've had all season. you're entering Thursday's game with the stars like Kyron Williams or Jackson Smith-Njigba or Puka Nacua saying, I'm getting a baseline of X. And while you don't expect somebody to get 45 points, the third highest score of the entire year, Nacua is basically a guaranteed 20 or somewhere in that range, and Jackson Smith-Njigba probably that same spot too. So while it's frustrating if you are looking at a 45 spot from Nacua, you're expecting him to do that. Maybe not double the points that he had, but you're expecting Nacua to have Kenneth Walker pull off probably 18 more points that you're expecting on a week-to-week basis is far more damning and frustrating too. So like I think your team is far better suited than Big Al's. I think Al's got some questionable roster decisions he's making currently at the moment, and that you were able to get 30 points effectively at Kenneth Walker and subdue what would be a massive Nacua thing. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see if the two hosts on the MCS Digital Show get to the finals, but a good start for both of you guys for sure.
Yeah, it did not work out the last time, these two hosts. Joe's referencing myself and Jim the Manchild Lurch, who I see in the chat. Shout out to MC Show Digital, a.k.a. Jim Lurch, who's in the chat watching. Again, he's doing some traveling for the holidays. So I'll be hosting both this show solo with Joe Bartel. Will be me and Joe together. And then we'll have our NFL pick segment. That'll be coming up on our YouTube channel. So if you guys are interested in seeing that, and Joe's been killing it over there as well. So we got a lot of competition at the top of the leaderboard. We'll give an update on that in our NFL picks against the spread segment. Just make sure you guys hit the notification button on YouTube. We also reached 425 subscribers, so we will be doing a giveaway later in the show as well. So a lot of fun stuff has been happening here on the program. Now, here's one. This affected me, I guess, in a positive way in a different league, but I know this bothered a lot of people out in the audience, is that the Rams tight end, Colby Parkinson.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I was on Instagram because I had a few minutes between the morning show I just finished and this one. And I'm like, let me just hit the old Instagram scroll. And I came across a joke of like, a person saying, great, I'm going to start a Rams tight end, and the backup to the backup of the tight end is the one that gets you. And you look at the, sort of target distribution yesterday for the Rams, and there's all the Terrence Ferguson gets a touchdown. You had Colby Parkinson, who some people were like rooting for to do some, Davis Allen getting involved. Like, how frustrating is that? Because Joe, as a fantasy expert, you know this better than anybody. You put so much work and hard work into it, but still there's this element of surprise, motherfucker. And like, there's nothing you can do. You could do all the prep and everything you could do. And then that happens and you're just like frustrated because you put your lineup together with the best information that you have possible at that time. And then Terrence Ferguson and all these other guys.
Yeah, so let's set the table a little bit here. Devontae Adams aggravates the hamstring injury that he had been dealing with coming into last week. Adams was likely not going to play here on Thursday, and the expectation was, well, the Rams will be scoring points. We understand the Seahawks defense being what it is. As long as there isn't weather involved, we think the Rams score points and get into the red zone. And who better to convert in the red zone to really make up for the Devontae Adams, who has 14 touchdowns, than Colby Parkinson, who I think he had 3 over the past 2 weeks or 4 over the past 3 weeks, something like that. And more importantly for me, Colby Parkinson had at least 4 targets in 5 of the past weeks too. Like, Parkinson had been getting more involved within the offensive scheme. And if there was a 1-for-1 replacement, it was supposed to be Colby Parkinson for Devontae Adams. This was something that I had pushed back a little bit on the Monday Waiver Wire podcast because we mentioned Colby Parkinson, actually talked about him quite extensively, and it felt like this ball just started rolling with the entire fantasy industry probably Monday afternoon onward, when it seemed very clear that Devontae Adams wasn't going to play and people were looking at the underlying data. I call them like the sabermetrics of fantasy football. It isn't quite to that extent as baseball, but there was like snap percentage of being open, like how many times he's running route runs is very sabermetric-y sort of day too. So there was a lot of the underlying numbers that were kind of pointing towards Colby Parkinson being effectively a top 10 play. And it's like, okay, theoretically in most leagues, in a 12-team league, even a 10-team league, there's maybe 4 teams left. How realistic are you looking for a top 10 play to position outside of Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback replacement? You would hope that the final 4 teams don't need one, but it really is kind of underscoring what has been a frustrating season at tight end. If you don't have Trey McBride, if you don't have Brock Bowers, for example, I guess George Kittle in that mix, I've said Harold Fannon's in that mix as well too, but outside of maybe 3 or 4 tight ends overall, to be able to strike gold on the 45 point Kyle Pitts game, or getting a Hunter Henry or Dallas Goedert 2 touchdown game, whatever, that has been monumental in terms of turning the tide. So trying to find that tight end and one that was effectively a free everywhere in Colby Parkinson was awesome. And the Seahawks were one of the worst defenses against opposing tight ends too. So all of this was adding up to be the replacement to Devontae Adams, the Rams offense. And lo and behold, every single situation played out the way you'd want to if you're playing Colby Parkinson. The rain wasn't a factor. The wind really wasn't either. The Rams had probably, 6-7 different times they're within the 10-yard line. Mm-hmm. And yet it was every other way that it was schemed for. And that's the exact reason I pushed back on a Monday that I wasn't necessarily reaching out to go get Colby Parkinson. I had him at tight end 13. So he's just a little bit outside that range. When a player is not to the level of a defined asset within the offense, you can look at all this underlying data and metrics and assume something might happen. But in a game that is of critical importance like this, which decides the NFC West division more or less, possibly number 1 seed as well too, you don't necessarily have to just go force feed the guy that was getting red zone targets there. You might want to do something a little bit different, some different creative moves. And defenses can kind of also key on Colby Parkinson as well with Devontae Adams out. So definitely frustrating. I know a ton of my colleagues were in on that. I was pushing it to a certain extent that Colby Parkinson had elevated to be close to tight end 1 status, but I feel for a lot of people who made that choice because they are going off of what a lot of smart people were telling them to do. And it didn't end up working out, even though all the circumstances, situations would have said this should have been a plus spot for him.
All right, guys, make sure you guys like the video here. We're streaming live. This is the Man Shot Show, Boy Green Digital. Every Friday, we do our fantasy football conversation with Joe Bartel. Next Friday, of course, for the holidays, we'll be readjusting the schedule, so just stay tuned to the YouTube channel. You'll see where all our different interviews are. So if we're chatting with Joe, it won't be on Friday. It'll be on a different day next week, which we'll talk about. Keep lighting up the comment section with your questions. We will go through all those, I promise, here on the show. Another one here, Joe, in terms of decision. So in a lower league, it's not one of our radio leagues. I saw an opponent have this difficult decision, or what I assume was a difficult decision. They had Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford led before last night, leads the league in passing touchdowns with 37 touchdowns before last night and had all these numbers. But the Seattle defense has been pretty stingy. They've been pretty good all season. The person is like, I didn't talk to this person, but I'm seeing what they did as they kept flip-flopping back and forth throughout the week. It went, no, Stafford. No, wait, this guy. No, Stafford. And they played the matchup, and they played a different quarterback that will play a crappier defense over the weekend in theory, and they bench Stafford. Stafford puts out a 30-burger last night, depending on your things. Is this one of these things, Joe, where, again, you're in the playoffs. It's do or die. You lose, you go home. Mm-hmm. Do you just play the best people, regardless of matchup, and you don't get cute, and you just say, hey, Stafford's been my guy. He's in the leader for the MVP conversation all year long in real football. Maybe I just got to ride him. I shouldn't play a matchup and just try to play a quarterback that may play, whatever random bad defense out there in the universe and just play the guys. Because in that case, it looks like a mess right now. We don't know what the other quarterback's going to do over the weekend, but that's one of those situations.
Yeah, I am normally a player studs kind of guy. We have a bunch of questions in the chat right now, and I think for the most part, I'll be saying basically the big name guys is who you want to have out there. Matthew Stafford wouldn't have qualified for me. I understand what he had been doing, but it was here's the 4 touchdown games against X, Y, and Z opponents who are bottom third in the standings. I wasn't expecting, with possible weather conditions involved and the way the Seahawks defense had been, and the way I would have assumed the Rams win this football game is relying on Kyron Williams and Blake Corum and their defense to kind of make Sam Darnold all over the place. All that was kind of true. It's just that they didn't end up punching it in too often from a rushing perspective, and instead had a result in play action pass or maybe some deep opportunities. So I was never really considering Stafford as a start this week, and I don't think it's a wrong decision to have benched him. Obviously, it looks bad in hindsight now at the point total, but there's a bunch of other guys that are probably in that range, that quarterback 1 range, where I think they have better matchups and you can more consistently assume they were going to get 20 points. And when I'm looking at the quarterback position, if I can get 20, 25 out of that, that's great. Obviously, if Stafford getting 30 is frustrating if he's on your bench, but I think there were probably better options knowing the circumstances that we had, at least in front of us, the information we had at least.
All right, let's go to the Thursday night last week again. We'll get to all your questions, guys. Keep putting those in the comment section. So Mike Evans, right? So he goes on IR. He gets activated off of it. But when he went on IR, a lot of people thought he was done for the season. So he was cut in a lot of leagues, and some people were able to pick him up. But I don't know how many people actually picked him up and said, "F it, I'm playing him coming off," because of all the risk. And Mike Evans freaking comes out gangbusters, like, oh my God, this guy was hurt, and he looks spectacular. So how do you judge what you saw on Thursday last week, Joe? Like, oh, well, Mike Evans is a clear play. You have to start him. Or was that fool's gold? Was that just a pop? And then all of a sudden we're going to get, some spreading of the ball there in that Tampa Bay offense. How do you perceive Mike Evans heading into this weekend?
I think of him exactly that the guy you're drafting in the third, fourth, fifth round entering this year. Really fortuitous that we had information basically saying Mike Evans was done for the season. People react accordingly to that. And then the only people that could really choose to go ahead and pick up Mike Evans were people that were already high in the standings anyway, due to luck or other various reasons. You could afford to sit on whatever that gold might end up being. I drafted Mike Evans in a bunch of places this year. He's not on any of my championship or semifinal teams because I didn't have a chance to go ahead and hold on to him. I was just struggling to get by to that point. So it's definitely frustrating to see what he did against the Falcons last week. I think he'll do something similar against the Panthers this week. J.C. Horn is available. Their stud corner. Of course, Derek Brown's been, I think, one of the more underrated best defense players in the entire NFL and part of the resurgence here for the Panthers. He's obviously available too. I don't think Mike Evans is going to be just a walking 20 points like he was last Thursday. This is a better defense, and I would assume Baker Mayfield could spread the ball around a bit more to Chris Godwin and Emeka Egbuka and everything else like that. I think Bucky Irving actually has a pretty good game as well too. I'm expecting offense, at least from the Buccaneers side and probably the Panthers side too. So that's the scenario where Mike Evans becomes a play for me. And basically in 3 receiver leagues, Mike Evans is a must start. He will be likely over a bunch of these other guys. And given what he could do from a red zone perspective, I have a hard time keeping Mike Evans out of my lineup right now.
Joe, I know you're going to have a close eye on this matchup. We have some Saturday football coming up here in the NFL. 2 guys that are unavailable for the Chicago Bears, Rome Odunze, Luther Burden. Is there other worthy Chicago Bears pass catchers or options you would go to with those guys being out and thus target your opportunities being available?
Yeah, in deep leagues, I understand Olamide Zaccheaus probably gets involved. I think DJ Moore becomes closer to must-play territory as a result. But the one that I wanted to just highlight, and it went back to the Colby Parkinson conversation, there was probably 3 or 4 waiver wire priority tight ends like Darren Waller, like Parkinson, and Colston Loveland. And we had talked about this on Monday that the assumption already was Rome Odunze wasn't going to play. I didn't think at that point I realized Luther Burden would be unavailable as well. But if you're the Bears offense, and DeAndre Swift also listed as questionable, I don't think he practiced basically all week. We'll have to see what his status is for that Saturday game against the Packers. If it only becomes Kyle Monangai and then other things, you can have the running attack work against the Packers. They're missing a bunch, obviously, of key pieces. Micah Parsons being done for the season ruins any Super Bowl aspirations the Packers have. But more importantly, they had the stud interior tackle that had been out since the Lions game, and you could see the rushing attack work in that second half of that Bears-Packers game from 2 weeks ago. I think you have ways, if you're defense coordinator Jeff Hafley, the Packers, to mitigate that, but it will allow the boot action, play action, and the rollout stuff where Caleb Williams has been thriving. So I think Colston Loveland, in the same sort of way that Colby Parkinson was a pickup and possible play, with both Rome Odunze and Luther Burden out, I think Loveland has to elevate to a bigger role, and it won't just be blocking and then boot action stuff, but I think he could just be a catalyst for the intermediate part of the Bears offense. I think Colston Loveland, I had him at tight end 10, and that was prior to knowing that Luther Burden was out. He might even be a bit higher, like over Travis Kelce, for example, with Gardner Minshew. So Loveland, to me, is the big part of this, and was, at least on Monday, still available in, I think it was like 65% of leagues.
All right, Dr. Bartle, give me the Packers side of it. Christian Watson, Josh Jacobs, these are big-time players that are quote-unquote questionable for the game. What's your expectations?
Packers are cooked. That is my expectation. I'm not trying to put the reverse jinx on necessarily, but couldn't have been a more catastrophic series of like 8 minutes in real time where the Packers were up 23-14. Jordan Love throws an interception. It was a great play by Pat Surtain, but Christian Watson gets injured. Xavier McKinney drops an easy interception. 2 plays later, Micah Parsons tears his ACL. You have Evan Williams, the safety as well for the Packers too. Probably not playing this week. I mean, it couldn't have been more catastrophic, and that's just kind of what my luck is as a Packer fan and Wisconsin sports fan. I'm expecting, if the Packers are going to be competitive in this, and Vegas does have this close, it opened the week with the Packers favorites despite being in Chicago. If the Packers are competitive, this is a Matt LaFleur was in his bag game, and by default, Jordan Love being in his bag as well too. And I do think that's possible. It sounds like Christian Watson is trending towards playing, and even though Josh Jacobs didn't practice all week, it's possible that he could be available too. I'm not counting my chickens before they're hatched because, quite frankly, this doesn't mean a whole lot from the Packers postseason perspective. They need to beat the Ravens next week in Lambeau, and probably both, winning against the Vikings in Week 18. So this game really isn't consequential for what the Packers want to do, at least make the postseason. Again, their Super Bowl aspirations are done, but the Bears have a lot more at stake, I think, to kind of plant themselves. I think Jordan Love will play well. I think you can have Jaden Reed get involved. And if Christian Watson is out, I think Matthew Golden could get more involved for the first time really in his entire career. Got a few more opportunities against the Broncos, and I thought did well last week. If you're trying to replicate the Christian Watson role, it's not Jaden Reed that does that. I think it's Matthew Golden. So if Watson's out, I kind of think Matthew Golden in super deep leagues could be a play too.
Okay, well, I'll ask you 2 quick quarterback changes. We'll take a timeout, and then we'll answer all your fan questions out there. One for injury, one for sucking. We'll start with the sucking first, I guess. Tua Tagovailoa goes to the bench. Not only to the bench, he gets sent to the shadow realm of QB3.
Right.
Quinn Ewers, the 7th-round pick, who was the 3rd string, leapfrog Zach Wilson, who was the 2nd string. We could get into that Dolphins drama perhaps a different day, but what does it mean for fantasy impact? Quinn Ewers in, a guy making his debut. For people that have Jalen Waddle, that could have an impact.
Yeah, Quinn Ewers actually did play in that Browns shellacking of like tsunami game and didn't look good. So like it's his starting debut, which is correct. Paul, you're right on with that. Tua had not been playing well. I understand that Mike McDaniel wanted better quarterback play, and that's why he benched Tua. In reality, the playoffs are out of the equation for Miami, so they have to see what they have in their 7th-round pick. There's a reason he was a day 3 selection, that he's not very good. So the good news is the Bengals defense also isn't very good. Now, they're actually kind of good against boundary receivers. So you think like your DeAndre Hopkins of the world, or even Mike Evans, for example. The Bengals, if there's one thing their defense does well, they can do that. But you use the Dolphins use Jalen Waddle much more as like a crossing route threat where you're running horizontally left to right, using motion to kind of unlock things. So in that regard, I think the Bengals defense, it'll look like on a metrics perspective that they should potentially stop Jalen Waddle with the quarterback downgrade. I don't know if that's the case. And we know the Bengals defense isn't very good against tight ends. That's the one area that I'd be concerned playing is Darren Waller with the downgrade at quarterback. However, Mike McDaniel had said after Monday's loss to the Steelers, he wished he got Darren Waller more involved. Well, Mike McDaniel, you could choose to do that. So if Mike McDaniel chooses to get Darren Waller more involved in the first half of this game against the Bengals, against a team that can't stop a position, I kind of think Darren Waller's probably fine too. And there'll be a lot of people hand-wringing about Devon Achane. They're going to point to the fantasy numbers Achane has done with Tua as the quarterback as opposed to when Tua is out. I'm not overreacting to that. Achane, the way that the Dolphins use him this year in particular, is so far removed than what Tua had been in past years when he was out with concussions. So I think Achane is still a must start. I think Jalen Waddle probably, where he was more like a low-end wide receiver 1, is maybe a wide receiver 2, but you could still play Waddle pretty confidently. And I think Waller probably is in that mix as his play too, if Mike McDaniel actually wants to get him the ball like he said he did last Monday.
All right, one more quarterback change, and we'll get to all your fan questions that were out there. Patrick Mahomes, devastating for the Chiefs who are living for the playoffs. That's real football stuff, but fantasy impact. Patrick Mahomes out. Gardner Minshew mania in. Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce. I mean, there's a lot of fantasy bodies that could be competing for fantasy playoff action right now. How big of a downgrade is it from Mahomes to Minshew?
Yeah, it's a roundabout answer, but let's start first with the Titans defense is actually really good against the run, or they have been now over the past month and a half. Good news is the Chiefs don't want to run the ball anyway. Now, maybe that's partially because they make dumb decisions like don't trade for Breece Hall, for example, but they are not a good running football team. They don't want to run the football. So Gardner Minshew will effectively be passing, I think, a bunch. There will be volume in that Chiefs passing game because the Titans also don't do well defending the pass. So in that regard, I don't mind Minshew as a play. Rashee Rice had concussion-like symptoms on Wednesday, has not been available to practice this week. I think by default, he will not be available this week at all. So Rashee Rice is out. What does that mean from the Chiefs pass catcher perspective? Well, maybe Travis Kelce gets more involved. Think back to that pick that ended the Chiefs game last week against the Chargers. That was Travis Kelce who was targeted there, and he got targeted multiple times with Gardner Minshew as quarterback. And Minshew has actually looked pretty good in his first stint or two with a new team. You think back to maybe the Eagles times or the Raiders games, like he has looked as a good and competent fantasy quarterback in the first couple weeks. It's just as film comes out or Minshew does Minshew things that he becomes less of a fantasy relevant guy. So I'm not really worried about playing him if I have to this week. I just don't want a guy like Xavier Worthy to be elevated to the number 1 role for the Chiefs if and when Rashee Rice is ruled out, because I don't believe he's used that way. In fact, I would almost rather say Hollywood Brown sees more targets, and I think Travis Kelce sees more targets too, provided he's still mentally there. I don't know how to quantify that part, and overall, I don't know how to quantify that for the Chiefs as well, who have made deep postseason runs 3 years now in a row. If they don't care about this game against the 3-10 or 11 Titans, whatever it is, I don't blame any of them. So that's the part I just don't know and makes me a little bit nervous if I had to play Chiefs guys.
Makes a lot of sense. Again, we don't know. Chiefs 7 straight trips to the AFC Championship game. Well, that came to a crashing halt. Again, we're speaking with our fantasy football expert, Joe Bartel of RotoWire.com. We're taking your questions, and this episode is brought to you by our friends over at Cam's Pizzeria, Oswego, Camilla's, Love at First Slice. Learn more about them right now, and we'll answer your questions next.
When you think of Cam's Pizzeria, think about two of your favorites. Their zesty buffalo chicken wing pizza or their tasty chicken bacon ranch. Over 16 specialty pizzas made fresh daily with the best ingredients. Indulge in their homemade calzones, subs, wraps, salads, and their famous cannolis for dessert. They're all made with love just for you. Order online for 10% off at camspizza.com. Locations in Camillus and Oswego. Cam's Pizzeria. It's love at first slice.
And again, cheers to Cam's. I was at their 40-year anniversary celebration at the Oswego location, which was terrific. It's right down the street. Great food, great people, and they do absolutely an amazing work and an amazing job. Guys, it's time for your questions. We're going to go through these in some random order and get to all of your questions. So if you have questions for Joe Bartel, now is the time to do so. I see that man-child's already talking crap from wherever the hell he is and at the holidays. Can't wait for the showdown between me and Big Al, which would mean, of course, I would lose in the fantasy championship and he would progress. But interestingly, shortly after that question, he had some interesting questions about his fantasy lineup. Let's go back to Manchild. Mac Hollins, Trey Tucker, or Isaiah Williams. Oh, God.
This can't be a real league, right? Like that's not who he's playing in the Champs League for this stuff. I have to go pull this up right now. There's no way. So I would be shocked if we're dealing with these names. It's a super deep league. I would be shocked if Hollywood Brown is not available in this sort of format. So I would rather play Hollywood Brown over all these guys with the assumption that Rashee Rice is out. I would rather have Darren Waller, Colston Loveland as well too. I don't know if that applies to Manchild, but for a lot of people out there, those guys are still available. I would have played them as well too. If it is strictly these three names and Hollywood Brown is not available among that group, I guess it's Trey Tucker. We assume that Geno Smith will be back for the Raiders this week. Maybe there's more volume going his way. I don't really feel confident about either direction. I don't have a lot of belief or faith in Mac Hollins or Isaiah Williams. So I guess by default, I would go Trey Tucker, but I would rather go Hollywood Brown if I needed to.
Wow. And I did confirm this is in the Champs League. So, let's start getting the confetti ready. These kind of guys, oh boy, that's concerning. All right, let's give another one real quick. We'll just bang out the man-child once and get to the rest of you. Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy at quarterback.
Yeah, I'll play Caleb Williams. Packers defense is completely lost without Micah Parsons. They're going to allow at least 30 points, I think. I understand no Luther Burden. I know Roma Dunze. Caleb Williams is going to do just fine. The Packers can't do anything without Micah Parsons, so I expect it to be just an offensive shootout between both teams. And I know McCarthy did well, and I know that Manchild's Giants are horrendous. Let's take it step by step here. McCarthy's had 2 good weeks. I want to see 3. Maybe I'll start considering at that point, but Caleb Williams is my play.
All right, let's go to Bubba Banshaw here. He has Jalen Warren, Rashee Rice, or Michael Pittman in the flex. Where do you go here, Joe?
Again, I'm assuming no Rashee Rice. If he is available, then I'll put Rice in there instead. But I think Rice will be out, and I'll go the Jalen Warren direction instead. I don't want to trust any Phillip Rivers Monday Night Football nonsense because the 49ers. I'll play Jalen Warren and just kind of hope that he gets a floor. That is one of the highest totals of the game of the week is the Steelers-Lions game. So I think Jalen Warren by default will get some volume that you feel comfortable playing him as a flex.
Thank you, Batshaw, for that on YouTube. Let's go to Origami Harvest on YouTube. I have Rice, Watson, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle. Not ideal. Who should I start in full point PPR? I need 2 receivers from this group.
All right, so let's unpack this. Again, I don't think Rashee Rice is available, but if he plays, he would be number 1. So let's just kind of rank that there. Yeah. I think if T. Higgins is available, I would play T. Higgins, but we'll have to see. He's been a limited participant in practice all week. He hasn't been cleared of the concussion stuff from 2 weeks ago. So it'd be Rice, Higgins, but I don't know if either one of them are available. After that would be Mike Evans then next. So I would be playing Mike Evans more or less for sure. And if Christian Watson is available, I'll play Christian Watson as well too. So he's number 4. Waddle will be number 5. Again, I don't think Rice will play. I don't know about Higgins, but Mike Evans probably in my lineup. Then Christian Watson, then Jalen Waddle. It's a good group of 5 receivers. Just would be great if some of them could be healthy for this game.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's go to Matt from Auburn on YouTube. I do have a championship caliber team in one of my leagues. Unfortunately, I eliminated him in the Quad City first round. And I felt bad because, you see these matchups sometimes, Joe, right? 2 playoff matchups are going on at the same time, and one matchup has 2 Titans going back 160 points to 157, and then you look at the other matchup, and it's like 80 to 70. You're like, and I told Matt this, both of our teams scored insane points, 160, 157, and in the middle of it, I'm like, Matt, I feel terrible. One of us is going to lose. I don't know who it's going to be. I feel terrible because both of us should be moving on to the next round. Obviously, look at the pillow fight on the other side. And unfortunately, Matt went down, and he's down to the Quad Cities. He's trying to work his way back up. I crushed his hopes and dreams by beating him, unfortunately. And I like Matt. He's a good guy. But, man, that just got to be frustrating because it's random gods who you're playing on all these random weeks, which is too bad. But anywho, back to his question, which does have Puka on it. So shout out to Matt for that. So it's a great start in the semis. Now it's time to get things done. Wide receiver, pick 2 of the group. We have Watson, Olave, Kayshon Boutte, and Michael Pittman.
Olave needs to be in the lineup for sure. That's a guarantee. And then it's a matter of if Christian Watson is active, I'll play Christian Watson. If he's unavailable, it becomes a lot tougher because I know the Ravens surprisingly are favored over the Patriots. You'll probably have that conversation here in the other show. I was shocked when I was going through the lines on that one initially. I don't think Kayshon Boutte is one I want to play, and I've been trying to deviate away from the Phillip Rivers sort of roller coaster ride or lack thereof with the Colts offense, but I would play Michael Pittman over Kayshon Boutte. Let's just hope that Christian Watson is available because then it's an easy choice with Olave and Watson.
Quick one here, because again, Joe, I've been praising you for all your expertise and everything on the show, but maybe you forgot the matchup. Chris Olave is playing against the Jets this week, so knowing does that want to change your answer?
Yeah, you're right. We should play more Saints players. That's actually what we should be doing instead. I mean, I don't know if you saw it. Well, you probably did because you're a weirdo and actually care about your team still at this point of the year. But the Saints are down to like their their 4th string running back possibly, and their 4th or 5th string receiver. Like Manchild was asking, do I play Isaiah Williams? Maybe Mason Tipton, who is going to be the number 2 receiver for the Saints this week, is a better play over Trey Tucker or Matt Collins or Isaiah Williams. Like it's really brutal, and I think Tyler Shuck can move the ball, but we're getting to the point where it's like we're testing things a lot. I know the Jets are one of the worst defenses and teams overall in the league, but boy, I don't know if that's going to be a guarantee. So I don't want to be in a spot where I'm playing Mason Tipton in the fantasy championships or semifinals, but he technically is the Saints' number 2 receiver outside of Olave against Juwan Johnson at tight end.
Which is crazy. Back to Badshaw. I know the Bears defense is projected low this week, but I still don't see much to pick up on my waiver wire. Should I start the Bears or go with the Giants this week who play the Vikings?
Yeah, and I don't want to play the Bears. I think the Packers offense will be doing at least their best to kind of stay within this game because the Packers defense can't stop anybody. So I'd rather play the Giants, I guess, against the Vikings. I would rather play the Saints against the Jets. I think Brady Cook is like quarterback 75 in the NFL. Why we're even doing that is weird to me over Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor. I would rather play whoever's going. I would maybe the Bengals defense against Quinn Ewers as well too. I don't really feel good about that, but I'll play the Giants over the Vikings given the sacks. But I'd rather play the Saints over the Jets, and I think Manchild actually has that at least in the finals here in the Champs League. So the Saints is probably the one I'm looking for if I'm trying to deviate from any of these waiver wire defenses.
Joe, first off, give some plugs. You have been doing great work on the RotoWire app all season, which has been fun. I love that we're able to do you guys have the articles, you guys have the podcast, which are great. The waiver wire is absolute must read and must listen at the beginning of every week to get everybody for the waiver wire, which again, all that movement could decide wins and losses on a week-to-week basis. So Joe, give us a plug. Man, the RotoWire has been grinding you. I mean, social media, video pop-ups, the articles, the podcast. You're doing a little bit of everything over there, man.
Yeah, we're almost done, right? We're limping to the finish line here, but there's only technically 2 more weeks for most of this stuff. On Monday, we'll have the Waiver Wire podcast posting where you listen to podcasts. Just search RotoWire Fantasy Football. I call it the most psychotic Waiver Wire podcast that you could do, or at least the article that accompanies it. We post that on RotoWire. There's no paywall associated with it, so you can go through and look at it. I update that daily leading up to Thursday's kickoff, so 4 different Waiver Wire articles get posted throughout the week, going over a lot of the options. We did talk about Olamide Zaccheaus and Hollywood Brown in this past Thursday update, for example, and I think I do a pretty extensive job of getting everyone up to date on the guys that might be available outside of kickers and I guess defensive streamers. I'll have the SiriusXM show in about an hour, channel 87 here, and I do one on Saturday as well, too, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, Angel Fire Radio. And if we're going to sit here and do this, let's get a little bit of good vibes my way. If I've helped out anyone else besides Jamie, I want a little bit of good vibes my way. My team is in the semifinals of the DraftKings $2.5 million maker.
Wow.
And we have a 1 in 12 shot of making it to the finals here. So If I can ask anything of anybody at all at this point, I just need some. I'm not really a prayers guy, but just give me some good vibes here for Jalen Hurts, Javonte Williams, Bijan Robinson, and Chris Olave or Devonta Smith. If those guys can do any sort of pop-off games, we could have a very, very happy Christmas in the Bartle household. So let's get some positive vibes going away. And if I can just get to the sweat of the championship, 539 people get a chance for $2.5 million. Really, really, really nice. So let's see if we can get there. One more step here on Monday, and then we'll have to see what happens.
Wow. Well, good vibes your way. That is wonderful. Even the fact that you're even in that conversation speaks to the fantasy greatness of one Joe Bartle so far this season. Joe, what I don't know is if whether or not this is our last stop or not, because again, we're doing a lot of holiday rescheduling next week with everything going on. So if I have to do it twice, so Santa does it, why can't I do it? So, Joe, I want to thank you for being on with us all season. You've been on with us for many years in our leagues, answering questions, being pestered on social media with text messages and tweets at you, asking for questions at all hours of the night. We appreciate everything that you bring to our airwaves here, buddy, and thank you and happy holidays to both you and yours, man.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. It's been obviously awesome doing this the whole time. And it's great that I have as many playoff wins this year as Jamie does. So happy holidays to everyone. And we'll see if we're back in next week or next year. Again, thanks.
All right, there he is, Joe Bartle. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate it. Make sure you guys like the video. We'll be back on for our NFL picks against the spread, which do include Joe Bartle's expertise in that area. That'll be dropping here on the YouTube channel in a little bit. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you.